Sue, welcome to the show. We really appreciate your time. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, it's doing very, very good, thanks. Let's just jump straight into this. I have so many questions for you, but you were a professional bodybuilder in the mid 90s. You starred in Nemesis 2, 3, and 4. Recently, you've appeared in a bunch of movies that Dustin Ferguson has directed, including a fifth Nemesis. But
hmm
before we talk about Nemesis, let's go right back to those professional bodybuilder days. I want
Okay.
to know, how does a love for bodybuilding form? Like, is there a light bulb moment where you know that that's what you want to aspire to be?
It wasn't so much that. It was kind of, um, well, how do I explain? It's kind of, like genetically, we all have a certain body shape, right? The way our bone structure is. And I was always kind of, even from when I was little, kind of just like feeling like I was kind of out of proportion, and it kind of runs in my family. We have the women have like large hips and athletic looking legs and kind of skinny upper bodies. And um, I was always, once I started kind of thinking, maybe I can change this. And I had a tendency to, I love food. So I had a tendency to be on the chubbier side, in my opinion. So I was always kind of trying to, jog or do some kind of sport and kind of get a little bit more fit looking. And my dad said one day he used to have these dumbbells in the basement and he would do pull ups and push ups and run and do all these weights in the basement. Um, and he once said to me, well, if you lift weights for certain parts of your body and eat the right kinds of food, you can make some parts bigger and some parts smaller. And I thought, that is genius. Whoever thought you could do that? So I just would start to play with my dad's dumbbells and try to do pull ups and stuff in the basement with him and stuff like that. And, but when it really hit home was in college. So I went away to college, stayed in the dorms. You eat a lot of junk food, you study and you stay up late, and you don't really have time to be fit like you tried before. Um, and so I joined this little health club, and basically it was like a women's health club. They had those Nautilus machines, you remember back in the day, and little aerobics classes. And I did so well, they hired me to be an aerobics instructor. And one day, one of the women saw me training, and she goes, "You have, your legs. You could probably like do bodybuilding type training." And I'm like, "Really?" So then I went a couple blocks down to where the guys worked out, the bodybuilding gym on campus, and started doing that. And so that's where I just really fell in love with it. I heard that there was a campus a university bodybuilding show every year and that there was a girls one too, and I'm like, I'm in, I'm totally in, I'm doing this. So from then on, once you get on stage once and get a little taste of how cool that is, you just, yeah, I just kept going.
Did you hear that, Ben? There's like a generic, the genetic sort of body shape. What's yours, mate?
Potato. You, you,
Well, I'm a pear, but you can always change it.
I
no, I
guess you got
found
to want.
I'm becoming as I get older, I'm becoming more pear shaped because my shoulders are shrinking and my ass is getting bigger. It's actually,
Yeah, aging will do that. I'm struggling with like that.
There's hope for you yet, mate.
yeah.
So then comes along this short guy with the world's greatest mullet. He directs B movies and he wants you to be the lead in one of his movies. Like, how did Albert Pune come into your life?
He okay, there was a guy named Kenny Castle, and he was like in the bodybuilding realm. He was kind of a promoter. He dealt with the guys that put the contests on, and the behind the scenes people who decided who was going to be invited to compete, and he put together the shows and communicated with the contestants. So I remember him. I'm pretty sure it had to be him. Said to a whole bunch of us one day when we were preparing for the Miss Olympia. Um, there's a movie director and he's looking for a female bodybuilder to be in one of his movies. And, can I give him your names or whatever he's looking for? So I think that he was communicating with like me, Sharon Bruneau, um, gosh, who else? Debbie Mugley, and a few others. And so it was arranged that right after the Olympia in '94, when we were all in our top shape, he was going to get us to come down to his studio and have us read some lines and have us kind of move around in front of the camera and see what we were like in person. So that's where it all started.
Was it an instant yes for you? Did you have any reservations about making a movie and being the lead?
No, because I was pretty sure I wouldn't get it. Yeah. I mean, if I knew I was going to get it, I would have thought a long time and thought, wow, this could be like a real big undertaking, right? But I was like, I'm short. These guys are tall. They always place ahead of me. They're taller, more majestic looking. They have bigger hair. They're going to get all the attention. I'm just going to fade in the background, and I'll go try, and it'll be funny. And so that was my view of that. I
What
didn't
what do you think? What do you think sold you on him? Like, what was it that got you the role?
I really have no clue. I mean, I'm sure that I know that I had talks with him about it numerous times, and I'm pretty sure what he always would mention was that he just had something in mind and wouldn't know until he saw it,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a thing.
Just that
And
instinct.
yeah, because I don't think he was definitely looking for someone short, but he might have liked my more feminine side and the fact that I was a little bit smaller than the other girls, and maybe it was easier for me to actually capture on screen the feminine side, uh, because I was supposed to look pretty, menacing, but like the men were still supposed to be taller than me and stuff like that. So like for me to really kick one of them's ass had to be like, oh wow, not just because she's taller and bigger than he is, right? So my height might have been a good thing in that aspect, but yeah, I think he had us do things like, running to see if we had the right look, like because I did a lot of running in Nemesis too. I mean, it seemed like all I did was run through that desert all the time.
Yep.
And so he's like, I need to have you run a certain way and make sure that you can do that on camera and look like. He wanted me to look like Daniel Day Lewis in that movie, and I'm like, you want me to run like that? I still don't think I did that well, but yeah, he just had something in mind and it just clicked. Yeah.
And
I
having
think
had no, yeah, go on, Ben.
I was going to say, I think it is definitely a thing. Like I remember watching Bo Svensson in Walking Tall too, and he has this running scene, and that guy's legs are so big that he couldn't do it. Like he was just like lumbering along. Just there's no speed there at all. Like I think it's when you're dealing with people who are super fit, especially like muscle fit, then you can get caught up. You get the wrong kind, and you just like, well, there's like that. There's that great. I don't know if you get it here. You had it in the States, but we had a Lipton tea ad with I can't remember that guy's name. He's a wrestler. He's huge, but he's holding up his glass, and his bicep is so big that he can't
reach it
glass to his mouth.
Yeah.
Well, have you seen the way Steven Seagal runs?
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's pretty special.
Albert didn't cast him for that reason, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So having had no acting experience, like, did you know what you were doing when the cameras rolled?
By that time I did, yeah. But he had to put me through a lot of I read a few lines and he was okay with the way my voice and my presence came across or whatever, but he did send me to a lot of acting classes. And I had a coach, so I would go to see her every day and we would practice the scenes and she would play the other person or whatever, and she would give me a lot of hints because I really had never acted before. And even watching myself in movies, I'm like, man, I wasn't very good. But it's kind of, she taught me a lot of different techniques. And by the time I got there, I knew how I was supposed to read each line, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was really daunting. I mean, you get a big script, you've never acted before. A good deal of it was in Swahili. And so I was like, okay, it's hard enough to act in English. What am I going to do? So all I did was, like, when I was on the treadmill every day, he gave me this tape, in the old days of Walkman. So I would put it in the Walkman and put my earphones on and just spend all the time I needed on the treadmill and just practice. It was a recording of all the lines in Swahili that I was supposed to say with the accent and everything. So I would just be practicing that in the gym the whole time. People probably thought, what the heck is she doing? I would be just mumbling gibberish on the treadmill, but it took a long time for me to learn that. But yeah, at the beginning, I felt completely unprepared. And by the time he sent me to like acting training and stunt coaches and trampoline jumping training and stuff, and so when I got there, Yeah, I felt pretty ready, but nervous as anything. Boy, was I nervous.
But just out of curiosity, like when you were when you're competing in the Miss Olympia, you're on a like a cut, right? Like you're as lean as you can possibly be, and
Yeah.
that's quite difficult to maintain. So when you're going through that whole process with Albert, and he's getting you to do all of this super physical stuff. How does that, how do you physically kind of cope with that when if you like? I'm assuming that you have to stay in that kind of cut, that
Yeah.
weight for the film.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that because that was probably one of the harder things because we're used to stepping off stage, going to the buffet, and just, gaining weight all the way up to the next time we have to diet, right? It's a way of life. We just eat. And so, yeah, I was like, how am I going to hold this condition? I mean, I'm not going to have abs for very long. I was very concerned. And so I had to make sure that I stayed on the diet. And I think it's easier to be physical and do all that stuff where you need flexibility and quickness. That's easier when you're leaner. Because in the off season, I couldn't have run or, jumped or thrown anything. You slow down a lot, you bulk up. So it was easy to do the physical part, but yeah, that diet, I had to really try to not default to, well, the contest is over. I'm going to eat cake all day. And it was rough because on set, they've got the craft services, they've got the food, and then they had like my food. It's like, no, you can't eat over there. You're going to the lettuce table. And I was like, oh man, it was separate.
So those the first three sequels in the Nemesis series are quite different to the first one. Albert once mentioned to me that he had intended the sequels to all be just one movie. And so I'm wondering, when Nemesis 2 actually came out, was it a different movie than what you had signed up for?
When 2 came out, no, I pretty much knew what that one was all about.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
the tricky part was that we filmed Nemesis 2 and 3 all in the same like 2 month period. So they took me to, I think we did it in Globe, Arizona, this little town. And it was kind of odd because it seemed like one big movie that I filmed. So when I saw Nemesis 2, I'm like, okay, which parts are going to be in 3 and which are in 2? Because some of them we did like, the day after each other or whatever, and the costume changed a little bit. But yeah, that was a little confusing. Those two were very close because we did them at the same time.
Did you know that Albert had actually cut a 100-minute version of all three of the sequels together? So there is actually a 100-minute cut out there that I think has actually been on television in Europe, but nowhere else.
Really? I would love to see that. I didn't know that.
It was the Alex Sinclair Chronicles, I think he called it. So
how cool is that? That would be neat.
I know. I'm gonna have to get onto Cynthia, his wife, and try and wrangle a copy or some sort.
Yeah.
And so many like great people have appeared in these movies, and particularly like had Chad Stahelski, or the director of the John Wick movies, playing the Nebula. And for our listeners, he has become one of Hollywood's sort of most bankable action directors. Do you pinch yourself now looking back at the caliber of people you worked with?
Yeah, I do. When I found out that he had done those John Wick movies, I was like, oh my gosh, and I think I even tried to send him a message saying, can you please introduce me to Keanu Reeves? Because I would do anything. I don't think he responded. but yeah, back then he was just a tall, fit, kind of thin guy with a long ponytail, and got in this suit every day and chased me around. And he was a nice guy, but yeah, whoever knew.
I know, it's amazing. And Albert has launched so many massive careers. It's just incredible when you go back through his work.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for all the other actors in the Nemesis movies being so good, I don't know how I could have done it, because they really, even though I played the lead role, they pretty much like brought the movie all along. I kind of just like followed them along. I was like, wow, these people are really good. They're really talented people.
You got to work with Tim Thomas, and I'm jealous of that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, he was so funny. He was always cracking us up, and just never a dull moment. Yeah, very funny guy.
That's amazing. And one thing that I have noticed, having known Albert personally and hearing stories and watching him, he had a habit of chopping and changing movies while he's making them, depending on current trends or changes of mind during the production. Was that your experience, or was it just 100% focus?
Uh, it was pretty focused. The script and the basic scenes never really changed. Although there was times when, I would think that it was going to be like shot in a room or something, and he would be like, "No, we're gonna do it out. It's raining today. We're gonna do it out there or whatever." And I'm like, "Huh," or whatever. But it wasn't too far off the path of what he had set down.
Awesome. And while we're talking about Albert himself, if you were to drop his name to people that have never heard of him, how would you describe the great Albert Pune?
Oh well. I mean, I do have to admit that at the time I worked with him, I hadn't heard of him before
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't really follow, sci-fi or action movies very closely. But I would just say he's a guy who's achieved tremendous amounts of success and is very talented and has worked with some huge, huge people. But at the same time, if you were to meet him, he's like the most kind, genuine, nice guy that you could imagine. Like he was just very I never saw him lose his temper. He always found everything funny about something. Like even if something went wrong, he would like kind of yell at whoever did it or reprimand or say, no, 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 we got to do it again. But he always laughed about it. Like he just had this grin on his face all the time, as if you couldn't bring him down. um, just nice guy, had a huge heart. He would do anything for you.
Awesome. Yeah, he was wonderful. And a story he told me about you, in regards to Nemesis 4, which I think Nemesis 4 is, I think it's the best of the sequels. I really, really enjoy it. But for some context, he made that movie with sort of leftover set design and budget from his movie Adrenaline with Christopher Lambert and Natasha Henstridge. And I remember him telling me that you had absolutely no time whatsoever to prepare. So is that true? How did this one come about for you?
Yeah, I don't think I had very much time to prepare at all. I remember at first he was planning for that one to be, he said, I'm going to do one where you're going to be like a vampire-ish. You're going to be very pale and skinny and have dark hair and be this very dark character. You're still going to be Alex, but she's morphed into this thing. Uh, so we even did a photo shoot for it, and it's used on the album or on the video cover for one of them. I've got this crisscross thing on and a dark thing, and I've got a gun down at my side, and that was supposed to be a whole different movie. And then he was like, "No, we scrapped that. It's gonna be different. You're gonna wear this white dress and heels, and I'm gonna come and take you to the mall in LA, and we're gonna go shop for this white dress because we need you to wear it, and it's happening in a month or whatever." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I remember going to the mall, and if you know me, I don't dress up. I mean, I got flannels on. I don't have dresses or heels, and I'm like, I really have to wear a dress. This is gonna be terrible. And I thought that the whole way, but yeah, it was kind of a short notice thing. I had the script, I had the dress, I had the heels. I showed up like, okay, and it was not one with a lot of complex lines. But it was very different than the other ones. It was.
It certainly was, and it was definitely a very highly sexualized movie. How did you feel about that at the time?
That is a good question. So back then, we didn't have the internet, right? And so I was fine with the whole thing, and for one part, they did make they made like a plaster cast of my torso, and then made this like dummy. So when it was a close up that looked like me naked, it wasn't. It was this thing that they made. Because I'm like, you're not having me topless and coming that close to me with a camera, like no. Um, and that was for some special effect part. But the other part, anything with partial nudity, I was like, can we just not? Can I just be wearing something? Um, and I agreed to it after he persuaded me. It's necessary for the scene. You've got to have this shock factor. And so I said, well, okay, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, unless I tell my family and friends to go see this,
Mm.
it's not going to be in theaters. They're not going to accidentally come across it and be like, wow, she's naked. So I'm like, I should be pretty safe. Well, lo and behold, here comes the internet. Now I'm like, okay, I have kids and they have friends, and just please don't let them find this. Not that it was a bad movie or badly done, but it's just one of those things where I'm still a little bit iffy about it, because
Yeah.
ever since then I have not been even partially nude for anything, and I won't be.
Well,
But
understandably. I mean, those scenes are, completely graphic, but the intensity and design is fantastic. Like they are very stylish, and it's a very good looking film. But I completely understand your reservations. As
yeah,
it's as mum on the screen. Oh no.
but the way it was done was pretty cool. I mean, I have to admit, and the trip to Slovakia to film that was just like the coolest thing ever. It's probably the only time I'll ever get to go out of the country for any reason, at least on my current budget. And so I took so many pictures. I would go to the stores and into town at night and take pictures of the architecture and the buildings there. It was just the most beautiful place.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're just about out of time, but before we do wrap it up, I would like to just sort of ask you an unrelated question to Nemesis, wondering what type of movies in general that you do gravitate towards.
Oh, I just gravitate towards comedy. Anything that'll make me laugh, and anything the stupider the better. Like, my friends make fun of me because Airplane is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Absolutely. We had David Zucker on the show, and I tell you what, that I agree. It's just one of the best. There's no beating it.
Yeah, I like Adam Sandler movies. I like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure movies. That kind of stuff. I just love to just laugh.
You're speaking our language.
It's all
Yeah.
gone.
Well,
Oh,
it's been such a delight chatting with you. I really appreciate your time, and I will be seeing you again next time I whack Nemesis into my Blu-ray player because it's quite a regular occurrence.
Good. That's cool. Yeah,
So thank
Nemesis
you.
is still my favorite.